driving proud, treading water that they drowning. My head on the swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 190 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Joining me as always is my partner in crime, the man, the myth, the legend at FF Snoog. How you doing tonight, Snoog?
We're doing good, Dad, and we're excited. Two of my favorite players face off tomorrow night in primetime, Alvin Kamara and Travis Etienne. Both have been sure thing RB1s this year so far, and I'm excited to see how they do against each other.
I know I'm the Dynasty dad and I got 4 kids, and sometimes a friend of mine was like, who's your favorite kid? I was like, I can't answer that. That's a weird thing. Who's your favorite running back tomorrow between Kamara and Etienne?
It's got to be Kamara. I mean, he's my favorite player ever. Right next to Tom Brady and Gronk. The New Englander of me says that, but he's just been my favorite player to watch, favorite player in fantasy football, just all around my favorite. But Garrett Wilson's closing in on that eventually once Kamara retires, so.
And it's been fun with Kamara because we've been saying it for months. You and I have so many shares. We got him so cheap. And tonight's show, what we really want to talk about is smashing these running backs, these running back trade targets, the guys that we're going to go after, their strength of schedule the rest of the way, pretty much tell you guys everything that we're thinking of, who we're trying to get, why we're trying to get those guys. And this is that time of year where, you know, we're going into week 7, Snoog, and we're looking at, you know, a lot of key buys here. You know, Breece Hall's on buy, Joe Mixon's on buy, Dameon Pierce. There's a lot of guys that are Miles Sanders are not going to be playing this week. And I think this is, for me in Dynasty, where you really separate the men from the boys, right? Like weeks 1 through 5, you know, you don't have as many buys. There isn't so much going on. Now we start to get into some weeks here where week 7, week 9 start to be some pretty heavy buys. How do you go through on your rosters? You know, I know a lot of you guys loved how Snoog and I were talking about that the other day. Talk me through what you do as far as bye weeks go, as far as running backs go, and how you're looking to move forward from week 7 to when we get to the playoffs in week 15, 16, 17.
Yeah, so I like to kind of address my team situation. Like if I'm a team that's 6-0 or 7-1 or just one of those top heavy contenders on like top of the ranks, 1 or 2 seed, I'm looking for the future. I'm looking at buying Christian McCaffrey if he's going to miss time. I'm looking at buying Justin Jefferson in redraft. And those are the moves you got to make because those are league-winning moves. And I've said it many times, if you're not first, you're last. Unless second place gets a reward for, like, if it's like money back or if it's like split pot, like maybe like 300, 100. But
and when you say you're trying to buy Christian McCaffrey, on the flip side, you're looking at that guy who's 3-3 or 2-4, and he has Christian McCaffrey, and it's like, McCaffrey's sitting this week, potentially. So now I'm going to go after that guy because he's in – once we get to week 7, you almost play this thing the same as redraft, right? It's like if you're in that 2-4, 3-3 range, it's like every week matters big time.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, prime example, guy that missed 4 weeks, 5 weeks. When I had a team that was 4-0 in a redraft team, it's actually a home league. Kid started out 0-4 with Jonathan Taylor. Flipped him to me. I actually got a really, really cheap, good deal on him. I think I flipped like Demont and maybe, I think it was like, who was it? It was someone like not great, like a flex wide out. Better, who was it? It's going to bother me. Oh, it was Deontay Johnson. And I was like, all right, this is a move I'm fine making because it's like, all right, Jonathan Taylor, true league winner. Is Demont really going to get me there? Like at the time, I didn't think so. So I took Jonathan Taylor in and now he's already back. Like, 2 weeks later, he's back. He's in my lineup. Demont's injured. Like, you got to take those risky moves if you want to win your leagues because Jonathan Taylor, like, I think he caught 6 passes the other night. Like, we don't see Jonathan Taylor doing that. He's in a new system. He's an elite running back, and now he has league-winning upside. So that's the chances you got to make if you want to bring home the pot.
I want to talk to it's all every roster is different. You look at some of them, and I mean, I have ones where I am 7 running backs deep. Alvin Kamara is my RB7 in one league. Like, that's just how nasty this team is. But then there's other ones where it's like you only have 2 running backs. And what I've been advocating doing, and I was talking about it with Mung yesterday, is if I have a Devontae Adams in a middle of the pack, I'm trying to get a mid-24 first in Jacoby Myers. If I have Stephon Diggs, I'm trying to get Drake London in the 24 first, trying to stay relevant and insulate. And at the running back position, right now I've been tinkering around with some ideas. You know, like if I have say DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Walker, and you look at what both those guys have bottom 2 strength of schedules for the playoffs, and I think they're both fantastic players. But if I can take Kenneth Walker and I can get an absolute stud like an Alvin Kamara in a first, and that first is going to pan out to be something, especially if you are thin at running back, right? That gives you that idea. Now all of a sudden we get to week 14 and I need another running back and I can go buy one with that first. I feel like insulating at that running backs has always been the way. And for me, I'm just going to continue to do it. Like there's so much cheap production with Mostert, with Kamara, with the Aaron Jones, who is a big target of mine. So I'm glad we were able to dive in there a little bit on how we think about those things. Let's get into the players. I mean, who's someone that you have to buy, right? Like we talked about Kamara. We both know that he is absolutely on fire. He's had 3 straight games. If you play in PPC, over 20 points per game. He's 5th in the league in targets, and he's only, he missed the beginning of the season. Go out there and buy Alvin Kamara. Right now, I'm willing to pay an early second. I would not pay a 24 first, but if he's the last piece of the puzzle, I'd consider a 25 first. I'm not saying go do it, but I'm considering it.
Yeah, and I think with a trade like that, if it's like a last piece of the puzzle thing, you need him, and he's like slotting in as your RB2 alongside like a Christian McCaffrey, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna get 17 plus points per game from Kamara rest of the season. That's that's an RB1 playing at the RB2 spot, so that's locking myself in a ship. Otherwise, you can look for like that 1-2 swap that you like to do, like get Kamara in like a second for a late first. It's another good option, but I actually have 2 people here. I have one to buy from a contender standpoint and one to buy from a rebuilding standpoint. And I kind of want to see where your head is at on the rebuilding standpoint one. I'll start with him, Nick Chubb. This is a running back that's easily one of the most talented, best pure runners in the league, and he's in a run-heavy system. The knee injury wasn't as bad as we thought. Like this was we thought it was like he broke his leg in half, and it was like just like a gruesome injury. They didn't show anything. It ended up being like a torn MCL and like some other small injuries. It wasn't even the ACL, which is huge. That is like I was seeing Chubb go around. Like I saw him go for like a 24 second, like maybe 2 weeks after that injury, after we already got the results. And I still see him just getting thrown in trades like he's nothing. Like this is a guy that's going to come back and be a top 12 running back next year. So go ahead and send out a second. I'm good with giving up 2 seconds for him. If you're like a contender in that 1 year punt and you're ready to hit that hard competing mode next year, Nick Chubb's a great buy. And then the contender standpoint, Austin Eckler. I mean, this is a running back that leads the league in touchdowns for the past 3 years. He's an excellent PPR running back. He catches like 60 to 80 to 100 passes a year. That's going to vary because he missed time this year, but from here on out, you can rely on like 4 to 5 to 6 catches per game. He's going to be a sure thing RB1, top 5 guy rest of the season, and you could probably get him for a lead first. So he's another guy, last piece of the puzzle. Address your team if you need that running back. If you're thin, if you have like Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, 2 guys that are just playing they're not doing it for you, go get Austin Eckler. Trade your 24 first.
Let's start out with Nick Chubb. I put a thread out there as soon as the injury happened, right? For me, rebuild's my thing. And I'm like, when you can get a guy like Nick Chubb and you can put him on your roster and he doesn't play at all, like Kyler Murray, what we're seeing right now, right? Twitter's erupting because Kyler Murray's coming off the PUP list, which we knew was going to happen anyways. Like the writing's on the wall. And yeah, Nick Chubb might struggle a little bit out the gate, but by the second half of the season, you're going to have a guy who's probably going to be an RB1, if not an RB2. I got him for a pair of thirds. I've gotten him for, you look at that guy right now that, you're rebuilding and he's looking to go all in. You could probably get Nick Chubb in a third for Raheem Mostert. As much as I love Mostert, that's the type of move you want to make, right? You want to take that it's almost as safe trading for Nick Chubb as it is trading for a rookie pick because the value is insulated. I think he's an absolute freak. His recovery process is going to be quick. And yeah, I'm all in for Nick Chubb. And that's an area where if you have that running back on your team that somebody wants, I mean, I think you could even during some of these bye weeks, like last week, you could flip Chuba Hubbard for him. Like that's how cheap it gets when people want to win. They just look at that. I got Mike Williams and a third for Tutu Atwell the other day. Like for me, I'm just like, I don't value Atwell. I know Mike Williams is a little bit older, but as soon as he gets back on the field, that value bounces back. Just like Eckler. Eckler was injured, and I think right now he is going to be primed to dominate the second half of the season. I mean, if you look at what he's done over the course of his career, he's been phenomenal. He's been top 3 to 5 week in and week out for the last 2 years. And, I've seen some trades that I've helped people do in the Patreon where Tank Bigsby in a late first for Austin Eckler, and people think they're winning that one. And it's like, no, man, like the only way you win that one is if ETN goes down, because we know ETN is the workhorse there. Bigsby's falling out. I wouldn't trade Roshan in a first, but I would do that for Bigsby. I would do that for, even if I'm win now, I would do that with Kendre Miller. I would do that with some of those guys where, I love Miller too. So, I mean, I didn't want to go that far off there, but I think that's a way to absolutely win, is getting a guy like Austin Eckler, moving yourself there. And on the flip side, I mean, if you're a contender, I got to ask you, Snoog, this is a question I'm trying to do on all my teams, because I'm trying to contend, and I got Gibbs on all of them. So if I could get Eckler in a second for Gibbs, is that enough for you if you're a contending team, or are you willing to just sit back and be patient, knowing that, I just pulled up on Fantasy Pros, strength of schedule the rest of the way. Detroit is top 5. They have some absolute smash opportunities here at the final part of the season. So I'm a contender. I want to buy Eckler. Is Eckler in a second enough if I'm selling Jahmyr Gibbs?
I think it is, but I think it depends on team needs. Like, I think if I'm like last piece of the puzzle and Gibbs is just kind of on my roster, and it's not like I need him, and I have other young assets that my team's built around, that then I'd be okay with doing that. But I'd rather keep Gibbs and move other pieces to get him. Like, I would rather just move my first and a second and not get a second back with Eckler if I could do that instead. Like, if he's stuck on Gibbs and it's like, all right, keep your second, I'll give you my first and second, and let's get this done. I would prefer to do that, because right now Gibbs still my RB 6/7-ish in Dynasty. I did bump him down. He was 3 for a while, but you just have to adjust. I mean, if you don't adjust, then I can't consider myself a good analyst in any way possible. So follow the market, adjust, always put talent though. But
let's talk about that with Gibbs, because I want to talk about another trade that I made, and you're probably going to be mad at me. Breece Hall is my guy, and I am so close to putting him in the same tier as Bijan Robinson, because he has looked phenomenal, right? Like we were talking about, it's going to take, the J.K. Dobbins treatment. It's going to take him half the year to try to get things going. He's going to have to try to, really get back to full speed, and we don't know what we're going to see. And man, I mean, they just keep taking more and more of the brakes off. And right now he's sitting as the RB12 in full PPR. And I think we saw what he did against the Eagles. Like he was out there. Hold on a second. Let me double check that. RB16, sorry, Pacheco's 12. RB16, 426 yards, 6.5 yards per carry, which is almost a full yard more than anybody else. He has been absolutely electric, and I am willing to, and I want to get your take on this. I traded Jahmyr Gibbs and what will probably be a late 25 first for Breece Hall and Darren Waller. For me, I think I'm just moving into that area where I don't love Darren Waller. I think he's worth a second, but I would clearly pay a second on top of Jahmyr Gibbs for Breece Hall anywhere across the board. I don't think you can do that from Gibbs to Bijan anymore, but I think you can do it to Hall. And if you look at his schedule, he has the best schedule across the board between Pacheco, Hall, and Derrick Henry. Have the 3 easiest schedules rest of season, and their fantasy playoffs are juicy. Breece Hall is a league winner.
Yeah, Breece Hall was a guy that I was super high on, even in redraft. He was one of my flag plants, along with Kamara, ETN, Gibbs, and then Saquon Barkley, who has been just battling injuries, but looks great other than that. Gibbs, not so much, but I think there's definitely a gap between Gibbs and Breece Hall, from maybe not from like a dual talent perspective, because I think Gibbs is a much better receiving back, more versatile, more fit for like certain schemes. But I think Breece Hall is just a much better runner, more consistent runner. Mm-hmm. He has that bell cow profile where he's going to get the David Montgomery touches and still catch 4 to 5 passes out of the backfield. Breece Hall's my RB3 in Dynasty right now. I finally put CMC2. I just couldn't stop from not doing that. He was 4 for so long, and I'm like,
you jinxed him. And then he got hurt. It's your fault. Guys, blame Snoog.
My opinion was just like, all right, this guy is literally the best running back I've ever watched, and he's the best fantasy player I've ever watched. So why isn't he my RB2? I think Bijan's the only one that we could put over him right now, but Breece Hall is right there at 3. I think the gap is definitely a second to go from Gibbs to Breece Hall right now. And bias aside, I would give the
I'm
second on top of Gibbs.
I have not moved Brees Hall off my RB2. I'm still not. If you look at most 20-plus yard carries, right? Devin A-Chain had 17 of them on 38 carries. That blows my mind. I'm still going out and buying him. Brees Hall has 12 20-plus yard carries on 66 total carries. 1 out of every 5 carries he has goes for more than 20 yards. And I know a lot of people say, oh, yeah, he had that 83-yard run. He's had a lot of long ones, but 1 out of every 5 right now. He's an absolute home run waiting to happen. He's only got 2 touchdowns right now. And like I said, he's sitting at RB 16. But if you look at that over the last couple of weeks, you take out some of those early ones, and I think he's absolutely right in line with where I want him to be. It's been fun because this is someone where like Kyler Murray, like what we were talking about, you weren't expecting him week 1 to smash. You weren't expecting week 2 to smash. But if you look at him over the last couple of weeks, I mean, from weeks 2 to 6, he's RB 14. You go from weeks 3 to 6. I mean, he's just each week he's got more carries. He's into a better situation. And I'm all for it, man. I'm like, I was yelling Brees Hall in the offseason. I'm yelling it again. He's going to be a top 5 running back rest of the schedule. And Zach Wilson seems like he's putting it together a little bit. I'm not saying go buy Zach Wilson, but he's looked a little bit better, at least competent to a point where Brees Hall is going to be okay. And if Garrett Wilson's healthy, he's going to be okay. Tell me who your next buy is, because this is fun, just vibing off of who's that guy. Who are you going to go get?
Yeah, I think it has to be Saquon, because just like Austin Eckler, I mean, they're both some of the most talented running backs in the NFL. They're 3-down backs. They can catch the ball at a high level, and Saquon's not in a good offense, but Austin is. Saquon's the face of the offense for the Giants, I should say. And although the Giants' run blocking is 32nd rated by PFF so far this year, which is horrible, Saquon Barkley's been still getting it done. Absolutely dominated Arizona. Sub a 30-point game. Came back, had a great game against the Bills, showing that speed and that burst through the hole. 3 straight carries, he was just gashing them down the middle. I mean, he started to heat up there in that Bills game, so I'm all in on Saquon. I mean, Tyrod Taylor was quarterback in that game, so there was literally no threat at all. So, like, the Bills, all they had to do was stop Saquon Barkley to win that game, and they did pretty good at that for a while. But, I mean, Saquon Barkley has RB1 overall upside. He showed that in his rookie season. He also caught 90 passes then, and since then, when he's played 13 games or more, he's had like that 50-ish plus range of outcome ceiling, like for that kind of floor for catching the ball out of the backfield. And that's like on 13 games. So like this guy has that pace of catching 4 to 5 passes a game. And that's what we're looking for out of our elite running backs, hit that level of points per game ceilings that we want to be like a top 5 running back. Mm-hmm. And Saquon Barkley is definitely one of those guys. And everyone's like, he's so injury prone. He's not going to be good on the Giants. They're so bad. But yet again, he looks great on the Giants no matter what because he's so talented. And you could probably go get him for a first in your dynasty leagues.
He's only going to cost you a first, very similar to what we talked about with Eckler. It's probably like this is an area where you get these guys with production where you can give up maybe Jerome Ford in the first and get yourself to Saquon Barkley. And, Hunt's starting to eat into what Jerome Ford is. We're looking at some of these guys that might be fool's gold. Saquon Barkley is not. We look at first week back, 28 touches. Like we were not expecting that, right? 28 touches right off the bat. And I think we're just going to see them ride him into the ground. I don't like his long-term dynasty perspective with all the soft tissue injuries and how much the Giants are probably going to use him down the stretch. But he is, again, like Brees Hall, probably top 5 to 8 rest of schedule. And I love what I'm seeing from him. My next buy, and I like, we talked about you're starting to look at rosters right now. I'm buying David Montgomery, and I want it to be Jahmyr Gibbs, but I'm sorry, like David Montgomery, as soon as he's back from the injury, and you can buy him for a second. I mean, he was getting to a point where he was almost to the point of a 24 first. I think David Montgomery, you look at what their schedule is. They have the 5th easiest strength of schedule rest of the way. So this is an area, an opportunity where stash Craig Reynolds on the back of your bench. Jahmyr Gibbs needs to still be in that hold area, but I'm buying David Montgomery. Go through, look to see who's 2-4, look to see who's 3-3. There's one guy in one of my leagues who's 0-6 that has David Montgomery, and he's holding out for a first. And I'm like, it's not going to happen. But you keep kicking the tires and eventually you'll get him for a second, you know? And I think if someone come to you today and they're like, yo, give me a, second round pick in Zach Evans because Zach Evans gets the start this week, I'm taking David Montgomery. I think Montgomery smashes when he comes back. He's been fantastic. Craig Reynolds is fun. Craig Reynolds is a guy that's on there on waivers. He's still, we talk about a lot, having that third running back because you never know what happens when it comes to the fantasy playoffs. Guys like Craig Reynolds could put up 20 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think David Montgomery is a guy that just has such a safe floor. He's almost guaranteed to score every single game. He's what Jamal Williams is, but better for that Lions offense. He's more of a diverse skill set. He can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield, and he's more than just like a 1 yard touchdown. I mean, this guy can grind it between the 20s. He's a guy that'll get you 3.5 yards per carry and can take 25 carries. The only thing that worries me with him is he though? Like, is he a guy that can take that many carries? Because his whole career has been all about injuries, hamstring injuries, shoulder injuries. Now he's already had 2 injuries that were kind of big injuries this year. Like, these are injuries that are going to keep him out of a couple of games potentially. And I don't think he can take the workload that the Lions are giving him. So we might see a lot of banged up David Montgomery this year, which makes me want to buy Jahmyr Gibbs even more. Because when David Montgomery was out, he started to put up, I think he had like 80 plus rushing yards against the Falcons. It was really showing that he could kind of fill in for that spot and take down 18 carries and make some magic out of it. So although Dave Montgomery is a great buy low, because a lot of people think like that. They're just like, all right, Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery's nothing, but Montgomery is something. So if you can get him for a pair of seconds or a second in a guy like Zach Evans, I'm doing that all day because I think it's like you're guaranteed like 10 to 12 points a week with like upside of like we saw like that.
Yeah.
If he scores 3 touchdowns, he's going to get you 30 points and win you your week. So Dave Montgomery's a good buy in all formats.
So I got a question for you because it just came in my inbox and I started floating them out there and you and I both love. Somebody just offered me David Montgomery literally on the spot. Like just after that, they're watching the show and offered me David Montgomery for Jamison Williams plus. But this is the trade that I'm working on here. I'm a rebuilding team, and a guy you and I both love Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker has been absolutely, positively what we expected him to be before they drafted Zach Charbonnet. So he's been great. You look at what he's able to do. He has, what are we looking at already? He's got 6 touchdowns already. I think this is someone that absolutely smashes the rest of the way. He's got one of the more difficult schedules, but I have him on a rebuilding team, and I've been kicking trades to you all day. Be like, hey, what do you do with this? What do you do with that? And I'm a rebuilding team. So the guy just offered me Dameon Pierce, Chig Okonkwo, and what is currently right now a mid-24 first. If the season ended today, it would be the 105. There is possibility of it being higher. But if the season ended today, it would be the 105 for Kenneth Walker and Darren Waller. So we're looking at rebuilding. I look at Chig and Waller at this point, like it doesn't matter. Waller, unfortunately, is I think he's going to have a decent back half of the stretch here, but the age is starting to show a little bit. The team is not using him. They have literally no time to throw. The offensive line is so bad. So it's Dameon Pierce and a mid-24 first, or Kenneth Walker, and I've been getting a lot of offers for him. He's starting to heat up. Would you take that? You're rebuilding. I always look at rebuilding teams with running backs. As soon as that guy gets hurt, that value dips hard.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Kenneth Walker here because even if let's say I literally think we can comfortably say that Kenneth Walker would end up being the RB1 in 2024, just as like a value perspective, just because he's already in a phenomenal situation, one of the most run-heavy offenses with a pretty decent run-blocking scheme, and Pete Carroll's just great with the running backs. He feeds Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker has like 7 touchdowns already, 6 touchdowns, and he had his bye week. Like, he kind of struggled with scoring in between the red zone last year. I think he was like one of the worst. And this year, he's been punching those in, consistently got a lot better. He's starting to actually get downfield more, run north-south instead of just east-west like he likes to do and make people fall out of their cleats. But Kenneth Walker has been one of my favorite buys personally in Dynasty. What
are you willing to pay? That's the biggest thing, right? Like everyone's asking, they want to go out. I say he's not quite worth 2 firsts, but he's definitely worth 1.5 firsts. He's almost, I would say I would pay a 25 first and a mid-24 first. I feel like if I had to go that route, if you have Christian McCaffrey and you're a little bit worried. What's the difference between Kenneth Walker and Christian McCaffrey price-wise? And then let's go the other way. If you're trying to move, so if you're moving down from Christian McCaffrey, what would it cost? And then let's go the other way and say you want to move down or you want to move up from, you're going to move up from James Cook to him. So let's talk about those different ways, because I know, if you're a contender, you want to buy Christian McCaffrey, but you might be able to get something on top. I know you don't like James Cook, so what are you willing to pay on top? So let's do it.
Yeah, I think Kenneth Walker and McCaffrey are split by like 2 seconds. I think that's kind of that value split. Walker's my RB7 right now in Dynasty, fighting for that 6th spot, and I'm ready to put him there. James Cook, I just absolutely think is bad. So I think I'd want at least a first on top of James Cook. I think Cook's like I'd give a second for him. Like I wouldn't give anything more than that. I never liked him, and I just don't like Buffalo's run game and their scheme. They use like 3 backs. They like the grinders in between the tackles. So I think it's just going to be inconsistent this year. So I think there's a huge gap between Walker and James Cook.
Is it a mid first? Is it a late first?
I'd say mid.
I think it's a mid first between Walker and Cook, and I think it's a mid first between Walker and Christian McCaffrey. And I think that's the interesting one, is if you want to move off McCaffrey, this is your last opportunity. Like we're seeing him in an injury, but he's going to be coming back. And this is that last opportunity you have that, if you need to scale off, you can get Saquon Barkley, you can get Kenneth Walker, you can even get Breece Hall plus. That's not going to exist by the time this season's over. If you ride him into the sunset and he wins you a championship, that's beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. I've been getting offers, people are offering me Christian McCaffrey in a second for Bijan Robinson, and I just can't do it. Like I want to, but if Christian McCaffrey goes down, that absolutely burns you.
That's
so
a risky move
that you don't sleep at night. You just lost Bijan. You're going to watch him for the next 5 years, absolutely dominate. And I know people are worried about his touches. Guy I've been buying, I was a little early on Isaiah Pacheco month, but he had Denver last week. He put up 18 points in points per carry. He has, he has got a plus matchup this week with the Chargers. He goes back to the Broncos again. He has one of the easiest 3 fantasy football playoff schedules. And I think as long as Isaiah Pacheco is healthy, he is going to be a back-end RB1, a high-end RB2. And Mung and I were debating last night, and I want to get your point on this, is I said he's worth an early second. Mung said he's willing to pay a 24 first for Isaiah Pacheco. And that just feels out of my comfort zone. I would pay a 25, absolutely. But a 24 first, let's call it random, or Isaiah Pacheco.
I'm taking the first because he was a 7th round pick. The Chiefs aren't married to him. Like they're still using Clyde and McKinnon here and there in different formations. So I think that's just screaming for a situation like a Travion Henderson or Blake Corum or one of those guys to come in and just absolutely destroy that spot for you. And you're giving up a premium pick. Like you can almost guarantee that pick's better than Pacheco, whether it's a wide out running back, quarterback, tight end, Brock Bowers, any of those guys. You could just be like, wow, I just gave that up for Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th round running back. Even though he is good this year, he's going to continue to produce, but there becomes a tier of guys. It's like the James Cooks, the Kyron Williams, the Isaiah Pacheco's, like that tier of Brian Robinson, Damian Pierce. Like those guys are all just screaming to get their role stolen next year with this 24 class coming in. Like you got Braylon Allen, Rocket Sanders, Travion Henderson, Blake Corum, Will Shipley, Donovan Edwards, like absolutely loaded out the gills running back class, especially depth wise. Just waiting to come in and steal all these guys with like 4th, 5th, 7th round draft capital. So I'd be selling off those guys and moving on to like the Camaras, the Aaron Joneses, getting a little bit more production and just getting a better player that is on a big contract.
And that was the thing going into this year, is I had that list of like 5 guys that I thought were comfortable, right? It was Walker, it was Kamara, it was Breece Hall, it was Tony Pollard, right? And then we talked about dudes are going to get replaced because the 23 running back class is talented. 24 running back class is going to do the same thing, and we're going to be moving in some free agents there. I mean, there are very few guys where you're just like, this guy's the bell cow. This is what's going to happen. I'm not worried about anybody replacing them, and I think it's less than 10 guys if you look at it again.
Look at Algier. Algier was 1,000-yard rusher last year, 5th-round pick, looked really solid, great contact balance, ran the ball hard. The Falcons used their 8th overall pick on Bijan, so nobody's safe unless they're on that big. The rookie contract and team investment does matter because if you look at it like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, like they all use like top 2-round draft capital, and they're all elite talents. Like Kenneth Walker proved it in year 1. Brees Hall proved it in year 1. Bijan's proven it in year 1. Gibbs needs to, but Gibbs is locked in for 5 years in this Lions team with that 1st-round draft capital with the upside of getting that 5th-year extension. But like if you look at Travis Etienne, that's another one. Najee Harris, like they're safe. Like as much as you don't want to believe it with Najee, the team just sucks. But like Tank Bigsby, 3rd-round pick, that's not someone you're super scared about. Like that's someone that's like, all right, they don't want to give Trav the keys to just get absolutely abused. But
if you look at the free agents, I mean, you listed 4 running backs who are going to come in and have starter potential, but Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson. There's a lot of guys that are going to be joining this free agent class that, aside from the last 2 or 3 guys I named there, I mean, there's
starters are better.
Absolutely. And a lot of them are going to stay. I mean, I think Austin Eckler stays where he's at. I think, I think Derrick Henry's on the move. I think Josh Jacobs is on the move. Saquon hopefully is on the move, and I think Tony Pollard comes back. But these are the kind of situations where it's like, you got to start thinking a little bit like, is this guy going to have a safe job next year, or am I buying him for the stretch run? Guy that I'm buying for the stretch run is, we saw in week 1, he was top 3. It's Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is coming off the bye. Right now, he gets Denver this week. This is the get right game, right? Like we've seen what everybody does against Denver. Pacheco's had the worst game against them with 18 fantasy points. Everybody else has put up 25 or more as a starter. And I think Aaron Jones has a get right game here. A lot of people, he came back before the bye prematurely, had a really poor game. The whole offense did. And I think people are starting to think that's what it is. But Aaron Jones is super talented. He's been an RB1 year in, year out, or at least, early RB2. And I think you can get him for an early to mid-second plus a little bit of juice, and I would be willing to do that.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, another one. I look at Aaron Jones as like an Alvin Kamara light. And it's funny because I see so much Travis Etienne and Aaron Jones. Like I think they are so identical in players, just that explosive. They can get downhill. They can make you miss. They break a ton of tackles. I just view like Etienne's obviously the bigger version. I think Aaron Jones like 5'9", like 205 pounds. But Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, like these are those like pass catching, like better scat backs with great contact balance, elite traits, that speed, that vision, that tackle breaking ability. Like that's what you got to look for in those type of players, and they can give you big weeks. Like look at Kamara and Etienne's success so far this year. You can almost guarantee Aaron Jones to come in and give you similar success in that top 12 range if he's healthy, if that hamstring's okay. AJ Dillon, God, he's just an absolute chump. Like I think he's so bad at football.
He's worth streaming this week if you're really light because of it's Denver, but I'm with you, man. We got a question sent in from Case. He said he got offered Chris Olave and Tank Dell for Derrick Henry and Ramondre Stevenson. He's about to rebuild. Absolutely smash. Chris Olave is way too cheap. This doesn't go with the running back theme on that end, but it certainly does on the other side. Derrick Henry is an absolute must sell, despite the fact that he has that number 1 schedule. If I had Derrick Henry, I'd be flipping him for any first. I'd be flipping him for, I saw a guy the other day. He actually got Tajay Spears in a second for Derrick Henry. I would do that all day. I think Derrick Henry, you're on borrowed time, sell him. Ramondre Stevenson's the interesting one because, we had Joe Arico on here and he said, hey, he's about to blow up. He's going to have a really great, second half of the season. I talked to Zoltan. He said, hey, man, this is some of the worst, metrics that I've seen, and he looks absolutely stale right now. He goes out and he puts up 18 points, fantasy points this week. On the flip side, Zeke puts up 13. So they're getting a little bit closer in their touches. Where do you have Ramondre Stevenson rest of season? And what are you willing to pay in rookie picks to get to him or sell him, depending on which way you're going?
I have him. I actually have him. He's a talented player. Like I have him in that like RB 15, 16 range, like right there with Javonte Williams. Like they're back to back. I mean, he's a do it all running back. That Patriots offensive line is so bad, and they've been just so disgusting all season. The whole offense as a whole. So I think that's why Ramondre has been a little bit or a lot of bit disappointing, and I actually put him on my
Did you
big
say a lot of the opposite of a little bit is a lot of bit? Okay.
My mom used to always say that, so I stole that from mom. Shout out, mom. But I put
Mama
him on
Snoog.
my fantasy football regrets after 6 weeks. Ramondre Stevenson was right on there. He was one of those guys that I was drafting a lot of in Dynasty. I just loved him. I thought he was a great player. He had that receiving upside. We all saw that he had clear path to workload. It's just not happening there in New England, just as an entire team situation. It's not even a Ramondre thing. So I know like Zoltan, like everybody loved Ramondre. So it's like
if you look at the rest of the schedule, he's got another top 5 schedule. I mean, if you look down through, I mean, he's got Buffalo and Miami, both of them give up top 10. Then he gets Indianapolis top 5, gets the bye week, Giants top 5, and then the fantasy playoffs, he gets Denver in week 16, which is huge. Then he gets Buffalo in week 17, and Buffalo gives up, a lot of points to the running back as well. I mean, look at those kind of things. If you believe in Ramondre Stevenson, late 24 first feels like the right play. I think you can get him for a 24 second plus. And that's the way I would be looking at it. If I was trying to move off, because I think he has that PPR upside. And I think Ezekiel Elliott is there just enough to take away from him. Mac Jones is, struggling with the offense just enough to take away from him. But I think they put it together a little bit more going down the stretch. So that's a great one. For me, I'm trying to look here for some like cheaper production. I'm trying to find some guys that I think out of sight, out of mind. And for me, it's still James Conner. He's super cheap. You get him out there for, I've been seeing him. I've been buying him for thirds right now because he's injured. Chuba Hubbard, I've been buying for thirds because you saw what he was able to do when Miles Sanders is out. I'm not going to lie. Thanks. Chuba Hubbard has been better than Miles Sanders. Point blank.
So bad.
And those are guys that I think you can get cheap. I think Jaylen Warren looks like he has more juice than Najee Harris right now. Again, you get him for less than a second. Is there a running back that you're out there trying to buy where we're just, you got a basement hunt sometimes. You got to look at some things and say, hey, this guy has this opportunity here. I mean, we've talked about Algier could have that insurance running back value. Kendre Miller has looked really good. I mean, who are those guys for you right now that you're looking at other people's rosters and you're like, you know what? They're trying to get rid of running back points because they're trying to tank. I'm going for him.
Yeah, Kendre Miller is definitely top of that list for me. We're seeing him play a lot, even with Kamara back. They're just playing that 1-2 punch. And he's looking great. They're using him in a lot of third down situations, which was like his biggest red flag coming out of TCU. Like everybody thought he couldn't catch the ball. Luckily, I watched like every single game he's ever played in college, so I knew that he could catch the ball. So that was part of my process, was that I have a feeling he has that 3-down skill set. Saints drafted him. They said that he can be a pass catcher. All the signs are pointing towards success for him, and he looks great early on, even after coming back from that hamstring injury. So he's a guy I'm huge on, and he hasn't done enough for people to be like, oh, I don't want to trade this kid. Like if you go out and send out a 24 second, I bet you someone's going to bite. And another guy is Najee. I think Najee's just a great buy. You could probably get him for a second right now.
You can.
First round pick. He can catch the ball well. He can do everything solid. Like he's pretty good at everything. He breaks a ton of tackles. He makes people miss a ton. But he literally gets the ball and he instantly has to make like 2 people miss. Before, if it's like an under center like run, like say it's like an inside zone or something, or like an off tackle run, like he's got to break at least a tackle or 2 to get to the line of scrimmage. That's how bad that Steelers run blocking is. If he went to like the Lions, like he would literally be a better version of David Montgomery. And like that's what people need to understand is situations change. So it's good to like look at Najee Harris and say like, all right, he showed us that he can be that bell cow. Now we got to see him go to like a Kansas City or a team. Like once he's done his contract, then it's all wheels up for him from there. So I'd really like to see that because I do think that Najee Harris can put it all together and be like a top 15 running back for like a year or two. So I'm looking forward to that with him. Another guy, him and Kendre Miller, both super cheap options. You could go with Joe Mixon too, a guy that's been underperforming, and that whole Bengals offense has looked terrible. They're going to come back from the bye week, hopefully looking better, healthy, rested. Joe Burrow's healthy. Joe Mixon should be scoring a touchdown a game.
I do like that. Adam Wallace commented in. He said Stevenson has a ton of PPR upside after last year. He had 80-some targets. Definitely buy low if you can. I'm with you, Adam. He put Zeke as a workload reaper, but I think Zeke is a guy that I think you can get for a third. And we're talking about playoff schedules. I mean, if Ramondre Stevenson sits and Zeke gets that opportunity against Denver, could kind of show a little bit of glimpse of who he used to be, kind of deal. So I'm excited. The guy I'm buying is also still, it's DeAndre Swift. I've been trying to, the areas where I have Walker, I've been offering DeAndre Swift in a first, trying to get that way. I got that denied across the board, but I think DeAndre Swift, he's in Philly. He's rejuvenating his career. Worst case scenario, he's back in Philly. Best case scenario, he goes somewhere else where he does what he's able to do. I know he has 19 receptions for 109 yards, but he has 1,000-yard rushing, 1,000-yard receiving type ceiling. He has a bell cow type, ability, and he's showing it right now with 4.8 yards per carry, those receptions, but he's never going to get the touchdowns with Philly. He goes somewhere else. Sky's the limit, and I think I would be willing to buy him on a rebuilding team if you're moving off of one of these older vets, like if you're moving off an Eckler, you're moving off a McCaffrey, you're moving off one of those guys. Don't count out, DeAndre Swift. He's still just 24 years old. That's the same age as some of these other guys. I mean, I think Tank Bigsby's 23 years old. There's not a huge difference in age. DeAndre Swift is super young, super talented.
Yeah, 100% agree. And kind of, I think once you get out of like the rookie contract range, like the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Walkers, the Chains, like the Brees Halls, and it becomes kind of like a whole tier of guys on like that. Like you look at them in like that 1 to 2 year window because DeAndre Swift's on that contract year, Austin Eckler contract year, Saquon, Josh Jacobs, they're all on that contract year. So that's literally like my RB 9, 10, 11, 12.
Well, and that's why we have those guys so high, right? I mean, exactly. Bijan, Hall, Gibbs.
They're locked in.
Locked and loaded. You said A-Chain. We got to talk about him. We have to talk about him right now because they already said as soon as the IR is up, he's back on the field. There was no one better in football other than Christian McCaffrey when he was on the field. What are we doing if you're trying to buy him? I have a couple rebuilding teams. I have him. People are starting to kick the tires. They're like, Dad, what are you willing to sell him for? We talked about he's a little bit smaller on the size. Zoltan sent me a deal. He's like, hey, what about Gibbs and a second? So you can get Gibbs plus for A-Chain, but we haven't seen it from Gibbs. We've seen it from A-Chain. There's opportunities here. And people want to know what can they do with him. I personally think he's going to come back and be that same player and dominate this Miami offense. Is just give me all the pieces. Just give me all the pieces possible. But what are you doing with Devin?
Yeah, A-Chain's phenomenal. I mean, he was my RB4 coming out in that post draft process. And the thing with him was, if he wasn't undersized, he probably would have been like easily my RB3, pushing for that RB2 spot right there with Gibbs. Like they're both super talented, dual threat, like playmakers, can catch the ball out of the backfield well. They have that elite 4.3 speed. A-Chain landed in a heavens match for a landing spot. Like he is playing with like I always say it, McDaniels is literally a mastermind with his offensive playmaking and scheme. And he knows how to use players to their advantage and their skill set. So A-Chain is a guy that we've seen him pop off like a 60+ yard touchdown every time he's on the field and like on like 12 carries. Like he'll get you 25 points on 12 touches. So that's what's so incredible with him. The only issue that I have with A-Chain and the reason why he's still in that RB 8-ish range for me, right behind Walker, Gibbs, and those type of guys, is he already had 3 injuries this year. And like that is something to definitely be concerned about because he had the shoulder injury in the preseason, missed time because of that. And he had the knee injury now that he's on the IR for. He's missing a bunch of time. And then he had another small injury that kind of, I think it was his ankle that kept him like, wasn't going to maybe play, but plate. So that's definitely something to monitor is that, okay, he's small. He's like 5'9", 190, and he's already getting injured. So that is like right there. I'm like, okay, how can I put him over like guaranteed Kenneth Walker that's going to get me 20 touches a game and score a touchdown and just be a safer option. But then again, it's like this guy is looking like he's like the next like Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara. So it's like it's hard to say, but I see a lot of Austin Eckler and Devin Achane, just the way they move, subtle movements. They don't waste any movements. They'll just make you miss in a straight line, make you miss again, use their vision, use their speed, their breaking tackles. They're looking great out of the backfield, and they're smaller guys. So I think Achane is definitely a sure thing top 8 running back. It's just with the injuries and there's a little bit of the red flags there with that. I can't put him over the other guys yet.
Yeah, I mean, I still think if I can tier up, I'm going to do it. You know, if I can feel a little bit less risk to tier up to Hall or Robinson, I don't think there's a lot of opportunities to do that. If I can tier up to the wide receiver position or you know, even laterally move up. I mean, I've seen him traded straight up for Chris Olave. I would do that in a heartbeat because you know, the more I play this game, the more I do this, the more I realize running back is a position where I'm buying production. You know, you can be – I have teams right now that the wide receiver positions, A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, and my running backs are David Montgomery and Raheem Mostert. And people in the offseason were like, Tad's running backs suck. Like, he's not going to do anything. You just buy the production. Those guys are smashing. You go find the next guy. You buy Kamara for a second. You know, you start to buy some of these things. So, you know, this is a fun type episode where we can really hammer out that running back possession, talk about some of these guys that you and I are buying. A lot of them, we're on the same page. We're on the same page when it comes to Breece Hall, same page when it comes to ETN, same page with Eckler, Mixon. You know, we're not able to buy Bijan Robinson. He's just too darn expensive. But if you could, you're into that area, you know, and mitigate that risk by investing in these wide receivers as well. Tony Pollard, another guy that I think, you know, is worth mentioning in that way. He's gotten to be almost a little bit too expensive to invest in, but I think he has an absolute smash second half. I'm excited. You know, we're going into week 7. You and I have been putting out a ton of content lately. You're putting a lot of things out there on running backs. So make sure you guys reach out to us. Right now, the Patreon is thriving. I mean, guys are talking. I can't even keep up with it. It is absolutely insane. They're going to make me quit my job just so I can keep up with all the DMs and all the other things in there. We love you guys. If you guys want to be a part of that, like, honestly, hit us up. But the best part about it for me is the sense of community. I mean, you get all of Snoog's content, you get my content, you get Mung's, John's, but then you get that sense of community where guys are answering each other's sit-start questions, and our DMs are always open, and we're going to be in there, and then you're getting our weekly rankings. You're getting all of our Dynasty content. Myself and Snoog have updated our Dynasty rankings every single week. Most of you guys are talking about, yeah, I'm in this Patreon, and they do it once a month, or they do it every 2 months. We're doing it every week. We've updated all of the rankings every single week to put you guys in a position where it's like you're not saying, oh, man, this particular guy says Trey Lance is worth a first. Oh, no, that was before the season started, you know. So we're trying to make sure you guys are a step ahead, giving you trade targets, trying to set you guys up for success. And Snoog has that thing looking absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing I want to point out, Dad, is the sense of community that we've built in this Smash Accept Discord. It's like you said, say me and you, we both have other jobs. We're not on there 24/7, but you have 100+ other guys in there talking all day long, helping each other out with trades. It's a spot for you guys not only to get access to everything we do, exclusive access to other things like our consistent updated rankings, our rookie rankings, like 24 and 25 rookie rankings, Devy stuff, redraft stuff, best ball stuff, but you're also getting a spot where you can consistently chat, have access to certain leagues, and just talk with the guys that like it just as much as you guys. So it's all about just building that community and just being a fan of it and just enjoying it with other people that love it. So
your wife's tired of hearing about it. Your girlfriend's tired of hearing about it. Your coworkers, just come in the Smash Accept room and talk about your trades because we actually care. We're going to talk about them the same way. So, you know, guys, this has been a fun episode. Thanks again for tuning in and enjoy the process.